I generally haven't weighed in too much on Star Wars news or other similar kinds of discussions within the fandom, but since a few times in the last couple of videos I've mentioned things like unreliable narrators within the text of Star Wars lore, as well as cautioning people not to take any Wikipedia article or YouTube video, or in this case of what we're going to be talking about today, article as absolute fact, I thought it would be something worth discussing. In the last week or two I've run into several threads on Twitter and even some discussions on my Discord server and other places, springing from a Screen Rant article about a comic series in the new canon, dealing with one particular character, Patina Vor, who serves within the Empire as the Minister for Propaganda, and wants to unseat Palpatine. This Screen Rant article, at the very least in the title, claims that Star Wars has now credited her with the creation of Palpatine's empire, with Palpatine being incompetent, on the sidelines, or whatever else. This resulted in a lot of backlash against many individuals involved within Star Wars, especially on platforms like Twitter, by people who were talking about how it was ruining Star Wars without even having actually looked at the comic. What those people missed, and what the article misrepresents, as Pablo Hidalgo pointed out on Twitter, is that the comic book is portraying what she thinks her role in galactic affairs is, in her perspective. It's not giving a direct account of reality, and the comic book makes it pretty clear that this is her own incorrect perspective. The article and its title were effectively clickbait that misrepresented one character's perspective as a solid canon fact, and people took that at face value. This is something that comes up a lot, a character saying something doesn't necessarily make it so, especially when the fact that this is their own flawed perspective is a key part of the narrative. It reminds me of when we were doing the Top Captain Transmissions episode actually about one of the Wraith Squadron books, and in the book Zinj clarifies that by a governor getting ready for retirement, he didn't mean that he wanted Face, in the guise of his subordinate Zerl Darillion, to kill him. He just meant the kind of retirement that meant going to a cottage and writing his memoirs, as in just saying the guy was actually retiring, and that's the example Zinj gave. But because of how readily people want to take anything in text as solid fact, the Wikipedia article for that character just says he was set to retire around 7 ABY and planned to live in a cottage and write his memoirs. So there are a few takeaways here which I think are important not just for this specific example, but for participating in an internet fandom in general. For one thing, don't assume everything a villain or any character at all says in the book, movie, comic book, or whatever else is entirely honest at all times, or necessarily that they know all the aspects of what they're talking about. It may make it harder to suss out the minutiae of a universe's canon if people have different motives instead of just spewing straight facts and dates within a piece of media, but that's kind of how stories work. For people who don't get that, I recommend avoiding most movies. Secondly, as Abraham Lincoln once said, don't believe everything you hear on the internet. Sometimes it can be something as simple as people being incorrect, but clickbaity articles in particular aren't great for their factual accuracy. They're usually just trying to generate as much attention in whatever way as possible. That also goes for anything I say in lore videos. I try to be as accurate as I can be and to represent things how they were originally intended as best as possible and talk about different ways the same event may be portrayed in different versions of different stories, but I can and have been wrong before, and it's not always possible to get every aspect of a particular event in canon fully represented within a video. This goes for any other lore video and even places like Wikipedia as well. Lore videos and Wikipedia are fun and a great starting point, or great for people who want to know more about a topic and want a general understanding, and enjoy that type of presentation, but don't necessarily have the time or resources to go into reading each story on their own. Take that media, enjoy it, and get what you can out of it, but also don't take any channel as gospel. Most importantly, please don't be part of a mob that gets outraged, especially over clickbait. Whatever you may think about the new Star Wars canon or any other bit of media, it's very bad form to go after the creators because you don't like something, especially with platforms now like Twitter, where you have direct access to those people. It's something even I get directed towards me from time to time with my work on mods or YouTube, but I'm definitely a creator on a much smaller scale, so there's very rarely the same level of vitriol directed my way. There's never going to be anything that anyone puts out that's universally loved, so try to keep in mind that no matter what anyone does put out, there's going to be some subset of people who really hate it. And it's not justifiable for them to go after the person who created it in that way, or else no one would ever really bother creating anything. It's just not worth it. So try to keep that in mind when you're engaging with creators and when you are criticizing works. I'm not saying that you have to enjoy everything. I'm not saying you have to approve of or like everything. It's just understand when you are engaging with people that they are people. There were, for example, a lot of people who loved the prequels, but there were also a lot of people who hated and criticized the prequels. But even if you start from the premise that every single criticism is completely valid and correct, there's no level of quality that justified the level of hate that drove George Lucas to want to not have to deal with the response to his creations anymore after the prequels, nor what Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best, who played Anakin in Episode 1, and Jar Jar Binks respectively went through. It's just as unacceptable when directed towards the people who hold the reins of Star Wars today. Again, this doesn't mean you have to like what comes out or approve of it, but understand that there's been different approaches to and evolutions within Star Wars and any other piece of media since day one, and that will always be the case. You may like some and not others, and that's fine. Being passionate about something you enjoy is a good thing, and having critical discussions is also a good thing. But we're all people, and nobody benefits from a discussion which starts from a place of hostility or bad faith. I'm primarily someone who engages with the Legends canon and doesn't have as much experience with new canon, although I do plan to read some more of the books coming up, especially the ones by Timothy Zahn, but it makes me just as disappointed to see Legends fans that are trying to prevent other people from enjoying the new canon, as it does to make me hear about new canon fans who try to just trash Legends or say that, point to the wackier parts of it and try to use that to discredit it. I don't think either side benefits from that. And really, I don't think it should be a thing where there are sides either. If you enjoy something, then enjoy it. If you don't enjoy something, then you're free to not enjoy it. But you also don't have to go and tell the people who created it that because you don't enjoy it, you think they suck and are worthless as a human being. And certainly not to prevent that as reasonable criticism of whatever it is that they made. And definitely not to take any response they make to people who are making that kind of so-called criticism, where they try to call out the negative behavior in that, and take that to mean that they are insulting anyone who doesn't like their work. Because those are very different things. That's going to do it for my thoughts for today, though. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and hope to see you next time.